Democrats are demanding an extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Republicans insist they won't negotiate until the government reopens. It doesn't look like this thing is stopping anytime soon. No meetings planned this week between Republicans and Democrats for the time being.
Well, for more information, now joining us is Debra D'Agostino, founding partner of the Federal Practice Group, who represent federal workers in employment cases. Thank you so much for being with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so off the bat, 750,000 people impacted. Anecdotally, what are you hearing? What's the sentiment? What's the emotion in this moment right now?
I think everyone's just frustrated that there doesn't seem to be any movement, and this really is something that impacts people's lives, right? Their ability to pay their rent, pay their mortgage. And so to hear that it looks like this could just drag on and on is incredibly stressful for federal employees. And then, sort of overriding that is Trump's continuing threats to do mass layoffs. And, plenty of federal employees are just worried, am I going to get the email that says I'm going to be separated for a reduction in force sometime this week?
Do we have any information about the likelihood of permanent layoffs, and is that allowed by law?
So it does not look like it's allowed by law in this particular circumstance of a limited lapse of appropriations and a shutdown. We know some RIF notices went out to some smaller groups of federal employees last week, like USPTO, for example, issued some RIF notices. But, there was a whole lot of the RIFs are coming that we heard late last week, and then a whole lot of they're still coming, but they haven't come yet. And I think, folks are starting to say, is this a little bit like the tariff situation where it's like they're coming, but wait, actually, maybe it's a negotiating tactic. And it's just, these really are people's livelihoods at stake. So it's incredibly stressful to be sitting there not knowing, what the next few months could look like.
It sure is. Debra, help us understand this. If it's unlawful, how can it happen? Do the workers who might get laid off, do they have to comply? I know that the courts move slowly, but if it's unlawful, why would it work?
Well, they definitely can't just keep coming to work if they can't come to work, right? So, certainly you just can't access federal systems without being entitled to. But, if they are going to do a RIF, they're going to give 60 days notice. And federal employees do have the right to appeal a decision to separate them through RIF to what's called the Merit Systems Protection Board. So in the private sector, if you're fired, you could go into your local court and sue for wrongful termination. Federal employees don't have that exact ability, but there is an administrative body that they can appeal to. Unfortunately, it's going to be a slog of a process. There's already thousands of appeals that have been filed since the Trump administration took office. And so, unfortunately, it's just going to be a long haul for these folks.
In a situation like this, you always see one side blaming the other, saying it is their fault. I even believe the White House on their website was saying this was a Democratic shutdown.
Which is also illegal.
My question to you, for folks that are impacted, do they care? What do they think about the finger pointing, or is it get a resolution done?
Oh, I don't think they care about the finger pointing. The civil servants are there regardless of who's president doing their job, right? They just want to do their job. I think what's most frustrating is that it looks like we're looking at another week where there might not be real negotiations. They just want government to function. They want Congress to do their job so they can do their job.
Debra, at what point do you think, what dynamic could change to where the American people begin to feel this? Because for the most part, I still think it's, parts of Virginia and D.C., like TSA, for example. At what point do Americans say this has to stop?
Well, I do think that, I certainly heard stories about long lines at airports over the weekend, and I'm sure that's going to get worse. Probably air traffic controllers too, right? So there are several folks who are being forced to work without getting paid. And that's really hard for folks to do, especially something like, a TSA agent. That's not a huge salary to live off of already, never mind trying to do it without getting paid. So, I do think federal employees have felt that, the way they're getting separated from government is in a way it's not a scalpel. It's been sort of a butcher knife, right? It's cutting this program, cutting that program. Not a whole lot of thought and consideration has gone into who's getting separated. So it's like it pops up, right? Americans feel it here and there. But I do think if this drags on, they're going to feel it in ways that hit their daily lives more and more.
Yeah, you start seeing TSA agents and air traffic controllers not showing up for work, which at some point has to happen. That's when this thing gets real for this country. Debra, thanks so much. Really appreciate your insight there. Meanwhile,